I really appreciate, especially seeing the changes that y'all are doing in the people's lives throughout the world. It's an amazing thing. One of the things I'm going to be talking about that doesn't have quite the same glitz to it, because in a lot of the world, there are just the biggest need is extraction. And any of us who've gone to third world countries are well aware of that. It's great to be able to do the repairs and add the teeth. I mean, that's great. I can see that Maasai guy jumping up and down, and that's cool. But we're going to focus a lot today on simple extractions, and with the idea of multiplying disciples through this idea. Motivation for the ministry that we've got, Matthew 9:35, and Jesus was going about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. And it's the three-prong approach: teaching, preaching, and healing. As we well know, those things all go together. Opportunities, verse says it, seeing the multitudes, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. And throughout the world, we see people who have not heard of Christ, or what they have heard has oftentimes been in a real jaded way. Oftentimes with people trying to get something in return for their, listening to the gospel and such, or having not heard the gospel at all. So it's a world ripe for harvest, and the question is, who are the best workers suited to go out for the harvest? Are they foreign workers, which would be us, who can't speak the language, we don't know the local customs, the culture, that sort of thing? Or could it be the local people themselves? And with the limited training that we're giving people, we can't train them to do a lot of the things, at least not in the first trips. We can't train them to do the restorative things. But there's a lot that we can train, and you'll see some of this. So the question is, how do we equip the workers for the harvest? Our answer is identify major needs in the country. Give the believers skills needed to meet those needs. Obviously, the universal need in the world, in third world countries, is dental care. As we've seen so many slides already. We'll use Liberia as an example here. Population's about 4 million people. We were there last October with a training mission. I'll be going back this October 1st through the 10th to do a follow-up there. There's 4 million people. There's 3 practicing dentists in the country. That's about 1.33 million. One dentist per 1 point. That's pretty good odds. These 3 guys, I haven't met them, but they are in the capital, Monrovia. So the outlying districts don't have anybody. There were, at the time we were there were 2 dental technicians that had been trained somewhere, I'm not sure where. They were helping out in some of the outlying areas. We met one of those gals, actually. She came and we were helping train her a little bit as well. So average income, about $500 a year. And if you look on the internet for life expectancy, what one source said 38 to 39 men and women. Another source said up to 50. So you don't, the biggest thing that we see in most of the third world countries that we've been in, which Africa and such, there's a whole lot of young people. And a whole lot of young people that have got real serious health issues going on. need for dental care is huge. 2 years ago, I was in Thailand. 2 weeks before we got there, one of the trainees, the trainees were from Myanmar. One of the trainees' grandfathers died 2 weeks before we got there from a dental abscess. And, you know, we don't think, in the U.S., we just don't, what do you mean you die from a dental problem? It doesn't happen. But it does. Worldwide, it's not uncommon. Here's just a few pictures of issues that we run into. And, you know, it's preaching to the choir. Most of you guys have seen this stuff anyway. Yeah, these externally draining abscesses are not uncommon. Perio disease, more perio, just rotted out front teeth. Those are not extra teeth. Those are, the teeth are just, perio and decay have just rotted those teeth. You're seeing roots, parts of the teeth. Again, all too common. You see the huge issues. All kids. We'll talk about this lady a little later. This was from Liberia. I've only got one other picture of her in here, but the other picture, we did surgery on her. Now, we did not train how to do this kind of thing, but she had the angle of her mandible was actually sticking out of her face. The side profile will show it. It looked like a piece of dried chicken bone, and it had been that way for years. She had active drainage just dripping out of it. So anyway, with few exceptions, the major need in most of these areas is extraction. We're in areas where, well, as that shows, the missionary here in Liberia, where we were at, pretty, educated kind of guy. He had not seen a dentist since before the wars in Liberia. In 1972, it was actually the last time that he'd seen a dentist. And the care is just not available to them. So hence, this kind of thing happens. It seems like a relatively obvious thing, but the need for extractions doesn't only happen when a team happens to come there. You know, it goes back with the idea of we go, we see the problems, we do as much as we can, but there's still huge needs when we're gone. And that's one of the things that we're just trying to meet. The bottom line here too, with no exceptions, the major need of people everywhere is Christ. And no matter what we do teeth-wise, if we don't give them an opportunity to know Jesus, we're really just putting fluff on their few years that they have here. You know, it doesn't really help them if they look better for a time, or if they feel better for a time, if they spend eternity in hell. So, ultimate goal is evangelism. Order is important. One of the things that we found is that if you have somebody come in and they're in a lot of pain, you can tell them anything you want. They're going to agree with anything you want, just because they want to get out of pain. they're not listening to you. I mean, even in our own offices here, if somebody comes in pain, until you've got that pain alleviated, you can't really have a conversation with them. Not on anything other than the pain. So what the exciting thing is that if you can get someone out of pain, take that girl with the huge face, you get her out of pain, then she'll listen to you. Then you've opened the door to be able to share Christ with them. So the order of evangelism is important. I've been on trips, and I've done a lot of trips where we've just gone and done dentistry. So you know, and that's fun. I love seeing the results. You know, in fact, watching your slides, it kind of made me go back and do that kind of stuff. It's rewarding. It is, and it helps the people so much. But a lot of times, the people the people that we're training can't do those kinds of things, you know. So here's the case for training local people. Anybody that's been to the third world knows that language is the big issue. I was in Haiti February, probably the same time you guys were there actually too. We were over in Jacmel. It's the first time I'd been to a French-speaking country, and I got there 2 days late because of blizzards and things, airline troubles. But I can't tell you how you get off the plane and it's a feeling of really kind of isolation when you don't know any of the language. You know, we had people there that they met me at the airport, so that all worked great. But throughout the whole time we were there, I didn't feel like I could converse with any of the locals. Not on a spiritual level, not even on I know a little bit of Spanish, you know, but not on a level that I could share Christ without going through an interpreter. And even when you go through an interpreter, you never really know what the interpreter's saying. We were in India a few years back. I was doing the lecture, and Charlie Vitito, another dentist that is part of this training program, was with me lecturing, and we were sharing with the group, and this Ernest was our interpreter. So we would say something, and we told Ernest, you know, tell him what we said. Well, I had said something, and Ernest, you know, it was a simple sentence, and Ernest just kept talking. And you know, Charlie and I are looking at each other, and so Ernest, what did you just tell them? And he said, well, I was explaining to them, you were talking about decay. And I was explaining to them how the worms that are in your mouth come and eat the teeth. And, you know, same thing can happen if you're trying to share the gospel. What they know of the gospel is what they're going to interpret what you're saying. And sometimes it may not be just what you want to communicate. We did have a few words with Ernest, and he got better. But that was a real clear reason that interpretation is critical. So one of the things with interpreting, if you are sharing, if you want to share Christ, which I know we all do, if we want to share Christ with the people, and you want to speak to them on a heart level, you really need to speak in their heart dialect, in their heart's tongue. And we just can't do it. So one of the reasons training indigenous people, you train people that are already of that dialect, already of the culture, and a lot of them are already friends in the community. So they know what the heart is going. Another issue is illnesses. I'm assuming almost all of you have been on a trip to overseas, third world. How many of you have never been sick when you've been over? Jan, that's impressive. We got one. How many of you have gotten sick almost every time you go? Well, that's good. Okay, nobody there. I know people that literally every time they go to Africa, they get sick. They get through it. They take their meds, but they get sick. Routinely, for us to go into that type of a culture with the sanitation and such, and they just got different bugs. I respect the missionaries that have been there a long time. They've already gone through the stuff, and then they don't get as sick. But initially, one of the things we get sick. The sickest I've ever been has been overseas, and I think that probably holds true for most of us at one time or another. Expense, another thing. Short-term trips are expensive. We hear that when we try to ask people to come with us. Well, I can't afford to do that. And I agree with you, Randy. I think it's a matter of priority, and people can do where their heart is, what they really want that they will do. But the reality is, it is expensive to send short-term trips. Food, lodging, vaccinations, airfare, let alone the time away from the practices. Most short-term trips are 1 to 2 weeks. Often feel very pressured to do as much as you can. I was in Guatemala with another dentist for, one morning, I just tag-teamed with the team. We extracted, it was over 50 teeth in the few hours that we were there in the morning. Afterwards I look back and say, gosh, we took care of a lot of problems, but we really weren't there. There was no compassionate outlay from at least from and Dale's, was the other guy I was with. We just didn't feel that, a lot of things were taken care of, but it really wasn't showing the love of Christ as we were doing it. But when we were done, there were still tons of people in line. And in fact, I've talked to some people where the mission organizations have actually been hurt by some people getting work done, and these other people who've walked for hours and hours or sometimes days, they're there at the end of the week, and there's nobody to take care of them. And the missionary that's still on site takes the brunt of that. So just building a case again for having local people do it. Some of these things I've already mentioned. The biggest thing here, I think, they're all important, but what I really like is this bottom one. Time becomes a non-issue. And for us who've gone on short-term trips, it's a hard concept to come with. In Haiti, we were part of a mission, or part of a medical team. Like I say, I got there a couple days late, so I wasn't in with all the preps, but I was actually leading the dental training part. And during the first day that I got there, they were just starting the clinical phase of the training. The medical team who was doing the triage out front, we were not getting many people through. And one of them came and said, well, can't you guys, there's 3 of you dentists here now, can't you you guys maybe work in another room, and you get, you work on people over here while you do the training in this room here. And my comment was, how do you think anybody's going to feel if 2 patients, 3 patients come in, one of them's been treated by an American dentist, and the other ones are being treated by Haitian trainees, and they're going to go back out. Everybody's going to start asking for the American dentist because we've had that happen, So I had to explain to the philosophy a little bit to them, but they understood that we were there. Their biggest concern was how many people can we get through, to sheer numbers. But with some discussion and we got to the point that they were okay with what we were doing. But the idea being that those numbers, those people, can still be helped next week, or the week after, or the week after. And in fact, that's happening now. A couple weeks after we left, they were having their own clinics. So that's exciting. So the time is not the biggest constraint. We don't have to worry. We can say, well, okay, if it's hurting tomorrow, or the next day, or next week, or next, somebody will be there that can still help. The people that we're training, oftentimes Christians do not have much respect in a community, especially Hindu, Muslim areas. The Christians just are really looked down on. But when they can do something that helps, that'll elevate their position, and not just position in terms of status, but it puts them in a position where they can actually have some authority with which to speak to the people. And in India, we had some of the highest classes of people coming in, and they were letting some of the outcasts that we were training touch them. And if anybody understands the culture in India, that does not happen. They would spit on them and not think anything of it. They would not have anything to do with them. But it was, again, we were there to train, and little cultural issue there too, because they asked for the white dentist, and I'm sorry, we're here to train your people to help you. And they allowed them to treat them. They listened to the gospel. So it really does. It builds a level of self-respect for one thing, but when the community knows that they can help get somebody out of pain, that's huge. And here again, if you relieve someone's physical pain, they will listen to you. I like the saying that once you've had your fingers in somebody's mouth, you're no longer just a casual acquaintance. There's really a lot to be said for the healing touch. The power of the healing touch is real. That's a power that comes from the Lord, I feel. When you're doing healing in Christ's name, people understand that it's different than people who have come in and just do it from a humanitarian standpoint. I know a lot of you have been to places where they've had medical teams come in before. And when Christ is the center of the program, there's just a whole different sense. People understand that, yeah, these guys, there's something different with them. They love us. They're concerned about us. So what we really need is our expertise and our willingness to train people. The biggest thing that we need is people to help do the training. The harvest really is ripe. 2 years ago, might have been 3 now, Charlie and I went to Ghana. The question that comes up off and on with this whole training idea is, what does organized dentistry say about it? And I'm sure some of you, dentists, we got to ask that question. I mean, the question comes up. 2 or 3 years ago, Charlie and I went to Ghana. We were at a Tamale, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Tamale, I think. We were at a compound up there. The missionary's name is King. I don't remember the name of the mission. But Charlie had gone over that. They were the first group that Charlie had ever gone and trained. So we had people that had been trained 3 years before we went back there. University of Kentucky Dental School sent PhD Judy Skelton, non-believer, and Rob Bonnie. Remember Rob and Rob, last name? I can't think of it right now. He's a dentist that works at the University of Kentucky, and he teaches there. They sent those two folks over to do a research study to see what kind of results we're getting from this idea of lay training. All that Charlie and I did that trip was extract teeth. We did no other training. We had 4 of the students that had been trained a few years before that were doing the same thing. And what do we have? Maybe 275 teeth apiece. Not a piece, but their group had about that, and Charlie and I had that. And the researchers did not know who had done the extractions. And they were not, when they came back in, they saw the patients at 3 different times, like 2 days, 7 days, and 2 weeks, something like that. All they knew them was by a number. So they looked at the extraction sites. They wanted to compare healing rates. They also asked some spiritual questions that they didn't actually put in the study, but they wanted to know the perception of the people. Did you feel like you were cared for, etc. And the bottom line was that the only difference in the extraction, the outcomes, was that the indigenous people that had been trained had about 6% higher dry socket rate than we did. And we don't really know why that was. I mean, there'd be a lot of things that you'd have to consider. Probably it just takes them longer time to take the teeth out, so they're spending more time doing it. But as to the 2-week point, everybody was doing fine. They were getting over things. The thing that was unbelievable is at the first 2 times that you had the people come back, in research, you anticipate a natural loss of your patients. Say you see 100 patients, well, you're asking them to come back. Well, you might get 70% of them to come back. They could not believe it. They had 100% of the patients come back to be evaluated. And Judy's comment, we can't report this. Nobody will believe it. The patients all felt like they were loved and cared for. Now, an event happened while we were there that I think God did just for us. the day before we got to the clinic, in fact, there's King's compound is here, and right behind it there was a missionary home from another ministry. That home blew up the day before we got there. The husband was killed in the explosion. His wife and 2 children, 12, 14, something like that, were over at King's, just staying there until they could, work on getting back to the States. At a natural gas explosion. Don't know what happened. But, so out of that tragedy, about the 4th day in to our research thing, this guy came into the compound on a motorcycle. And he was all concerned. He had driven over 4 hours on a motorcycle when he heard of this, because he had heard that King was killed. You know how the story goes through the jungle or whatever. But he had heard that King was killed, and he had to know for sure. So, well, King wasn't killed, and we met this guy. His story was an amazing thing. About 2 years before, he had come in with a dental problem, and they have clinics every week there, and it's a real strong ministry. He had come in with a dental problem. They took care of his problem. They shared Christ with him. He accepted Jesus that day. He went home. Back that 4 hours or so, was so excited, he shared Christ with his whole community. Now, he had multiple wives, very large family. He gave the wives and his sons, I mean, a lot of them were older. He said, look, we are becoming a Christian family. This is your choice, obviously, but stay with me, or you can leave if you want. But it's the old, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The guy has become a pastor now. They are having regular services in his community. His whole community has gone from a very pagan community to a Christ-centered community. And, it's just so exciting. In the tragedy of this man's death, I think that God used that to show Charlie and I that what we're doing is working. Because it's the exact, that is what we're looking for. I mean, that is why we're doing it. So Christ can be shared, people can be touched while we're not there. There was no American dentist there at the time that he came in to be helped. No English to I'm not sure what the language is in Ghana, but they didn't have to worry about the translators, So it does work. And it was just so exciting to see this guy. And what I like, one thing about Africans, they get animated, They really do. And he was. So anyway, the local churches or the local ministry chooses the trainees. What we ask of them is that they be relatively young, only because you don't want to train somebody whose life expectancy doesn't have, we want them to be able to see well. And above all, they need to love the Lord and really have a heart for evangelism. Spend 2 days of the lecturing and then 4 clinic days. And we just try to see as many people as we can. In Haiti, in February, we graduated 2 people. And during that week, those two people each had extracted more than 40 teeth. So, you know, I mean, you extract 40 teeth, you're getting pretty good. One of the comments Judy Skelton made when she was watching us in Ghana is she had gone to Kenya with us once to first see the training. Then she went back and she met a senior dental student that had only taken out one tooth, and he was graduating. You know, so it was a real realization for her. My goodness, experience does make a big difference. If you get a flat tire on your car, you don't send the car back to Detroit to get the flat fixed. You know, you can have the mechanic that's been trained down the street do that. And we're not trying to minimize dentistry whatsoever. I mean, I love dentistry. I love implants, grafting, you name it. I just love it. And I do that stuff at home. We're not training these people to do implants. We're not training them to extract impacted wisdom teeth. We're training them to patch the tire. And that sort of thing can be very effective. One of the things we treat them is what not to, or that we teach them is what not to treat. These are just a couple things that you would not treat. This was a huge tumor in the lady's mouth. Yeah, it was terrible. Here you go. That was the mandible just sticking out the side of her face. We did treat her. The outcome, we treated her on like Monday, and we left on Friday. She was getting better during the week, but we really don't know what the outcome was. When we got in there, that part of the mandible was loose, and it was all the parts where it had broken. They looked like they were just moth-eaten and rotten. So if it was cancer, she wasn't going to make it. She denied any history of trauma, but there's a lot of wife beating that happens. So that we're hoping that that's what it was. All right. We do follow-up training. We try to schedule it about a year after the original training, give or take a year. At that time, we go back over what we've trained them before and reinforce what they've learned, their techniques and such. In Kenya, we've been a number of years. There's things that, or not things, there's people that are called COHOs, which is Community Oral Health Officers in Kenya. The Community Oral Health Officers have had some training, and they do a lot of the dentistry that happens in Kenya. It's not as bad of a ratio as it is in Liberia, but it's a bad ratio there too. We have had some of the COHOs that have overseen our guys after we left them. And one of the years we went back, we were noticing, you guys aren't using the anesthetic the way we told you. They would use one cartridge of anesthetic, no matter what tooth it was. And that's all. And we had trained them to use, like, for a lower 2 to 3, minimum, just to be sure, because Christ would want this person to be comfortable. We want that person to be comfortable. And I can still see the guy. He understood and says, we have adopted the way of the COHO. we are sorry. You know, it's easy to fall out of the correct habits. So they're doing it. At least when we left last time, they were doing it correctly again. This is one of the kind of fun things. This girl, she was 17. She would not smile. She hadn't smiled for a long time. And simple little thing, I just took that off for her. And the photo up on the right there, you know, all of a sudden she saw a mirror and was she excited. But again, we train our guys not to get involved with these kinds of things. Because we train, we want them to be successful. There are so many people in such great need that they can choose who not to treat. You know, and antibiotics are a wonderful thing. And they're readily accessible in most countries. So if a person comes in and the tooth is not loose at all, or if there's issues like that, or if it's a wisdom tooth, we tell them not to do lower wisdom teeth to start with, unless it's obviously loose, you know. But we'll tell them to put them on an antibiotic. It'll knock the pain down, things will get better, and when the pain comes back, a lot of times the tooth is loosened up. We see that in our own practices, you know. So, lectures, you guys might recognize some of these guys. All right. This is not my... Brian? Okay. All right. Oh, okay. That's all right. We couldn't get my computer to come up on the screen. What I had is a little video that iTech had made and showing how just to give you an idea what the training looks like. It's a picture, different people with different dirtiness, guy sick, another person has washed their hands, and then it zooms in and shows the bacteria on their hands. The final one is with gloves, and it washes their hands, then puts gloves on and zooms in. So it's really pretty instructive on the video. Sterilization is huge. I didn't know that about Egypt. My goodness. Yeah. We teach sterilization. The two guys on the far left, actually all four of these guys are from southern Sudan. We are using pressure pots as well. We have used bleach, and that does it. But the pressure pots, you know you're getting everything, you know, and it, The portable equipment, there's all kinds of chairs. This happens to be the iTech chair. We have used anything from chairs like this to in Thailand we were using just beach chairs, you know, that you could get out of. The advantage of the iTech chair or some other dental chair that looks substantial is that it also gives an air of professionality. So, praying, you guys recognize John Pefferly there? Retired pedodontist. He's been a member of CDS. Students pray with each patient. Sometimes before, sometimes after. They share Christ with them. Generally, after either once they're anesthetized or what, you know, or at the end of the treatment. Here's students gaining confidence in what they're doing. Giving injections. This is Elizabeth down here. Thumbs up. She had just taken her first tooth out. She was so excited. It was number 14. She brought the tooth over to me on the top, holding it in the forceps, just shaking the 3 roots. It's exciting to see stuff. This was Liberia last year. We graduate them, what we call them is community dental health providers. We don't call them dentists. Now we had 2 other guys. This was one of the guys in Haiti. We had 2 other guys that we graduated as community dental health provider assistants because they really weren't quite catching on to what was going on, and that's okay. They're evangelists, so they'll be helping these guys. But so yeah, I've got a passion with training indigenous people. I see how exciting it can be. I see how the people can help their own people. We leave them the equipment. We leave them the anesthetic. We facilitate ways of replenishing supplies. And our program keeps changing as well. In some countries, you can't get cartridges at all, or carpules of anesthetic, so we use bulk. It's going to be a continuously changing program, but it's a program with endless possibilities. There's people throughout the world that need Jesus. There's people throughout the world that are in pain. Let's marry the 2 together, because they're in need. And again, what excites me is that when I'm here now in San Diego, there's guys over there sharing Christ because of what they've been trained. And that is exciting. It's that whole multiplication idea. And if we can have another, another person come to know Jesus because of it, that's super. So when the needs are great, the need for Him is greater. And my God shall supply all your needs according to His riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And then 2 Timothy 2:2. It's a navigator verse. The things that you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these also to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to take that from spiritual things to physical, whether it's dental, medical, building things, wells, you name it. Can anybody have any questions? 2006, I think, was the first time I went. Been to Thailand, India, on training trips. Ghana, Kenya several times. Help me. Where? Oh, Liberia, yeah, Ecuador, Haiti. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, Judy.
We have some friends who are doing something very similar to this in Kenya.
Yep.
And they're going through, I think, some kind of government process to get them licensed as a quasi-dentologist, kind of a health care field, so that they can legally ask for some kind of compensation, whether it's a chicken or a
Sure.
because these are like yours, the little ministers who are doing this, and I was wondering if that's part of your program too, such that they can ask for compensation.
Yeah, it has been in some of the countries. In Kenya, in fact, our lead liaison was a pediatrician that worked for the Department of Health, and the next person up was the head of the Department of Health in the country. So yeah, that was at the infancy stages, you know. Some of the countries we've gone, like in Ecuador, Steve Saint went down with us actually, and that was under the radar. Now I have not been to Nigeria, but in Nigeria they have actually the government has given the government has licensed the one group, but anybody who that group is affiliated with that group is under that protection. And that actually has gone out to a couple of surrounding countries as well. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this research study done. Because obviously, especially secularly, there's people that think we're crazy. You know, frankly, the first time I went with Charlie, after the first day of lecture, going through an interpreter, and seeing these guys with glazed eyes, you know, and I wrote in my quiet time notes, there is no way on God's earth this is going to work. I didn't share that with Charlie. You know, by the end of the week, that was Elizabeth holding up her thumbs. By the end of the week, I was very comfortable with their skill level. It's truly amazing to see what you can train when you're limited in your scope of the training. You know, people ask a lot of times about complications. Well, you know, really, one of the questions was, what about an anesthetic or an allergic reaction to the anesthetic? Have any of you guys ever had an allergic reaction to the anesthetic in your offices? Did you have one? One time, okay. There's hundreds of years of experience with dental experience, you know, patient contact, and it doesn't happen. I mean, it could. You know, I've had an allergic reaction twice, and it's been to latex. But this, yeah.
Application to knocking a tooth out with a rock.
Well, this is the case. Yeah, that's exactly the point. You know, and that's what we. That's our argument often. You know, okay, so what's their other alternative? You know, this guy's grandpa died 2 weeks before we got there. You know, that lady, if indeed it was not a cancerous thing, and she could get better, she would have died from that. There's no question whatsoever. We had her on IV antibiotics that entire week. In Liberia, we trained 12 students, and those students actually work out of a medical facility that's there. We wanted to get them to go out into the bush a little bit, but it just works better for that ministry to have the people come to the medical facility. There's no power to the facility, you know, and they don't have any dental. Well, they have the stuff that we left, but that was it. You know, they don't have any. It's not an established clinic or anything, but there's a lot of physician's assistants that are there that are being trained also. So that's the same idea. That in fact, they've got a PA program that I don't remember what the ministry was, but they're taking the same idea and using it in that sense, training indigenous people to be physician's assistants. And again, the trick is to share it with, to train people that are evangelists. I had a church in town that, or close to us, that was interested in having us do something with the Sahrawi people. If you guys are familiar with them at all, they've been exiled for, 30-some years now? Maybe longer than that. But the question I came up, that I asked the church was, do you have Christians in the community that we can train? And they didn't. You know, they wanted to use it as an evangelism idea, but there's not enough believers there to train, you know, to do it. And it would be this healing thing, it's a powerful tool in anybody's hand. So if it would be Muslims that are being trained, they could use it for the same purposes. You know, now obviously the spiritual element wouldn't be there, but it's not something you just want to. We said, you know, when you get to the point of having enough believers, you know, let us know. We'll be glad to do that. But it's counterintuitive to teach somebody that can't do the evangelism. Because that's the whole goal, not just to help people. Any other questions? The one thing that there's a website, Empower. It's the little M. I don't know how to do it on this computer, but it's empower.org. Oh, excuse me, empowerapproach.org. And that is the website of the ministry that is actually doing the coordinating. So no E, but just empowerapproach.org. But if anybody be interested, you can get in touch with me as well. And so we're looking for people we're looking for not just dentists, but I mean, it's great, it's like you're saying, Diane, to have the extra bodies to help with the sterilization and whatnot, you know. But we're especially looking for dentists that we can take over, train to train. And that's when it gets exciting, is when you see these guys taking off, doing their first training on their own, you know. And it's an experience. It's a lot easier, from my perspective. It was much easier for me to go and do dentistry because I know what I'm doing than it was to teach. Because when you're teaching, you gotta let people make mistakes. You gotta let them put the elevator in the wrong way and see that it's not working well. And we're always there to be sure they don't make bad mistakes. But the way you learn, oh, this isn't effective, you know. So it's I'm the kind of guy that wants to just step in and do stuff, you know. But so it's been a humbling approach for me, and but I love seeing these guys learn. I love seeing them have the heart. You know, one of the guys from Southern Sudan was just in tears when he realized what he could do. Another girl from Kenya, it's like it was the second time we'd come, and she had heard about it, and she didn't understand. You know what does, and it's like when she was going through it, and she got trained, and she was extracting teeth, and then sharing Christ. It's like a light bulb went on. She says, now I get it. These people will listen to me because I've helped them, because I've shown love for them, you know. And that's just an opportunity that there's too many unsaved people out there not to use everything that we can. So, Any other questions?
What's your average class?
That has varied, and that's been a little source of frustration at times, actually. The smallest I've had is 2. Now we had actually, that's what was Haiti this last February. We started off with like 6 or 7, and some of the guys their mind wasn't in it. So we had some of them to do the assisting, and that was fine, you know. We've had as many as 20, and that we had 6 dentists at the time, but that was, in my opinion, too many. That was hard. And one of the things that can be hard is that you need to have patients. You need to have mobs of patients coming in order to get the experience. Well, if you got 20 people, you need a whole lot of people coming in, you know, to get experience. And sometimes it's not that, you know, there's always the lines, but sometimes those lines, they're not all the type of teeth that you can use for training. So I like, you know, 6, 7, 8 is a nice number. That's you know, if you got 3 dentists and you have 6 or 8 people, you can do that. 2 to 1 is an ideal ratio, you know, because you have myself or some, you know, you would be training 2 guys, and they would be assisting each other, and so they're learning to assist as well. And when we send them out afterwards, we always send them out in pairs. You know, so there's never one guy out on his own doing anything. And we generally, unless the ministry doesn't want it to be this way, we leave the equipment with the ministry. So someone couldn't just take the equipment that we left and go set up their own shop for their own private, you know, their own private business. We do encourage them to charge something for the extractions so they can replenish supplies and things. Some countries that has worked well. I mean, it's like, well, yeah, of course, you know. Other countries, the ministry they just don't want to charge anything. And I guess from my perspective, you want it to be self-sustaining, but if the ministry views it as a ministry, and the ministry itself is doing the sustaining of their dental ministry, that I don't have a problem with. It would be much like if we had a church event that our church was putting on, and we were doing services for people. We don't charge them because it's a ministry of the church. You know, what we don't want to do is create a dependence on American dollars or Western dollars coming. You know, we don't want that dependence that, well, in order to treat people, we got to have money, and that's a non-sustaining type thing. Randy.
You mentioned about having patients who are not suitable for training purposes. What do you do when you have a patient who's been in line for hours, they get up and you say, no, you're not trained for it?
We will usually, one of us will treat them generally, and what we'll do is we will use those as training examples. We'll say, hey, guys, we want to show you this. This is what we do not want you to treat. And, you know, and really, when they see it, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You know, the classic is your peritonitis around an impacted wisdom tooth, where you've got just the edge coming out. You know, we won't tell the student. We'll ask them what would you do here? Because we've diagrammed all this stuff out. They should know what they're looking at. But so they see the swelling around that part of the tooth, and well, we'll just take that out. And so we want you to watch this. And it's like, whoa, you know, when all of a sudden, yeah, okay, So we won't, you know, we'll do it as a demo. Like that jaw, we would never want them to touch that. You know, even with the follow-up, I mean, that we were hesitant to touch that, but there was I mean, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. We had put a drain in her for a day, and just had continuous drainage coming out of there still, but so yeah, that's a fair question. And the other thing that we will do is a lot of times, if we see things lining up outside, one of us will go out and take a look and just tell them, hey, you know, this we can do, this we can't.